the humanitarian crisis in Gaza could get even worse after 9 countries, including Canada, have paused payments to the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Now, that comes after those allegations that some UN employees may have helped Hamas carry out its attacks on Israel in October. Cameron McIntosh with our top story.
As displaced civilians scramble to flee the fighting in the South Gaza city of Khan Yunis, UNRWA, the UN agency tasked with helping them, faces accusations some of its employees aided Hamas on October 7th. Canada, one of several countries to suspend financial support amid appeals from Palestinian officials.
This decision is incorrect and should be stopped immediately. We urge all these countries to repay the UNRWA because it's a humanitarian issue.
The UN says it's investigating the accusations against UNRWA, but warns suffering will only increase.
There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza who rely on UNRWA's humanitarian work, who rely on humanitarian assistance, even more now than they did before.
So far, the US, Britain, Australia, Italy, Finland, and Canada have all paused funding, with the White House calling the investigation an important step.
We expect that will be a complete and thorough and transparent investigation. We all want to see that.
Israel, insisting it's acting in self-defense, is denouncing the UN. Its ambassador to the UN accusing UNRWA of collaborating with terrorism. It comes at the same time as the UN's top court, the International Court of Justice, warned Israel against committing acts of genocide, but stopped short of ordering a stop to the war, disappointing many Gazans who are looking to the court to put international pressure on Israel for a ceasefire. Unless I'm allowed to return to my home, I consider the decision of the court unfair, says this man. In Khan Yunis, Israel continues to target what it calls Hamas infrastructure, which has included hospitals, further crippling Gaza's healthcare system. This former Israeli negotiator and cabinet minister doesn't see an end.
To stop the war today means to keep Hamas in power in Gaza, and this is something that we cannot accept.
While the U.S. says it's optimistic a ceasefire can still be negotiated, the fighting isn't letting up as the diplomatic strain deepens. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, amid those heightened tensions from the war between Israel and Hamas, people around the world are marking Holocaust Remembrance Day. Mike Crawley takes us to ceremonies overseas and here at home.
Witam ambasadorów państw.
At the site of the Auschwitz concentration camp, a solemn ceremony marks International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
6 million of us were murdered just for being Jews.
79 years ago today, Auschwitz was liberated, making the world aware of its horrors.
I survived. My father was one of the people gassed.
Bernard Offen was imprisoned in Auschwitz as a child. Nearly 60 members of his extended family were killed in the Holocaust.
I keep on telling the story because of people who don't want to believe that such a thing happened.
While the day is about remembering what was done to Jewish people in the past, Israel's ambassador also brings a message about the present.
136 hostages are still held by Hamas terrorists and must be released immediately.
Please rise as we recite the memorial prayer.
With this year's anniversary falling on the Jewish Sabbath, some commemorations took place Friday, including in Ottawa.
Okay, who else has a question?
These grade 6 students learn about the St. Louis, a ship that left Germany in 1939 with more than 900 Jews aboard, only to be denied entry in Cuba, the U.S., and Canada, and forced to return to Europe. A story told for children in this book by a Toronto author.
So I want kids to understand it. I want them to be moved by it. And listen, my ultimate goal is that they're going to want to read more and learn more about this history.
Ontario makes Holocaust education part of the curriculum in both grades 6 and 10. It's to become mandatory in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba schools by next year.
Given this uptick in anti-Semitism that we're seeing here in Toronto and around the world, I think Holocaust education is more important than ever.
As the number of people who lived through the Holocaust dwindles with time, that education can keep their memories alive. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
CBC also spoke with Eli Gotts, a Holocaust survivor. From his home in Toronto, he shares a message for the world and younger generations.
We've got to stop hate. I'm very upset with the world that after the Holocaust and the lesson that it taught, we are still killing people. We are still having decimation of people all over the world, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in China. It's awful. The world has not learned from the Holocaust what I wanted them to know. I want the world to give up hatred.
In other news tonight, a rally against the relocation of the Ontario Science Centre was held in Toronto today, bringing together neighbours and even the city's mayor.
I love the Science Centre. I love the building. I love the environment that is built in. The neighborhood are so important. It's critically important, especially for the children and the young people and the families in the neighborhood, because there's not a whole lot in that neighborhood.
Provincial and federal officials were also taking part, along with city councillors. They say moving the Science Centre would be a huge loss for the community.
Every part of our city should have a hub where people can go to take their kids, to be entertained and to learn.
This was the third community rally voicing opposition to the plan that would put the Science Centre at Ontario Place along the harbourfront. An online petition against the move now has 12,000 signatures, just under about half of its goal of 25,000 names. It was big news last year when the province proposed a breakup for Peel Region. Now, that plan ended up being scrapped, but as Tyler Cheese shows us, work is still underway to split up some services.
I really want to congratulate the provincial government on this decision.
This Mississauga City Councillor is in favor of the province's new plans for Peel Region.
They've come down to 4 key service areas where they know there's either a lot of duplication already between the region and the municipality.
This week, the province said those 4 key areas include land use planning, water and wastewater, regional roads, and waste management. The ultimate goal is to build more housing.
And so it just makes sense for municipalities to have control over that so that we can speed up decision making.
But not everyone agrees all of these services should be downloaded to the municipal level.
They haven't talked about the pipes.
She's particularly concerned about the transfer of water and wastewater services and isn't sure enough thought has been put into redeveloping that infrastructure.
That worries me a little bit because you have to have some control over the logical progression of the big service pipes. That way you control development and you're not skipping over areas and putting in really expensive sites.
Meanwhile, this Brampton City Councillor also says she's in favor of planning that will help her city build housing.
I think certainly by eliminating some of the reduction in planning and downloading the planning to the municipalities, we've always been in favor of that, and that will certainly speed things up.
But she doesn't want the cost to fall on residents' shoulders.
And whatever they come up with, I'm hopeful that they either stay at the region or they will save taxpayers money for the benefit of all residents in the region.
A board looking into the changes is expected to report back this spring.
Ottawa Fire Services says one person is being treated for hypothermia after falling through the ice. It happened in Orleans. The person and their dog were thankfully pulled to safety earlier this morning. Now, Ottawa Fire has released video on social media with some critical reminders for staying safe this winter.
Get low, spread out, and keep your distance by staying on the last known strong ice. Coach them to get their breathing under control. The goal is to keep them calm. Get them to reach out and put their arms as far across the ledge as possible. Keeping them in this position gives them the best chance for survival. Call 911. If you have something for them to grab onto, use it. Do not use your hand and become another victim. Tell them to keep their head down low and start kicking to get their body horizontal. Once out, crawl widely and keep your body weight spread out so you are less likely to break through the ice.
And again, officials saying the warm weather means ice is not safe. Let's bring in Sophia now to talk more about it. So many helpful tips there, because I would think hoist yourself out, but you're only going to break more ice in the process, right?
Yeah, tips that could save lives, and using another object as opposed to yourself to helping somebody out of the ice. Assume that most ice you see is not safe to be on right now. Great Lakes ice coverage, for example, is only a fraction of the coverage it normally is this time of year. We had all the snow this past week, and then we had a warm-up, rain and snow melt, and we've had fog for days and days on end. It continues very thick into the overnight period. Be careful driving. Visibility in some places is less than a kilometer, about 400 meters in places like St. Catharines and around the Hamilton Bend as well. Fog will be cleared out by Sunday morning, and that's when the next system comes in. Snow, wet snow, will be heavier into the afternoon period, but who will see how much? That is the question. Those of you in the Hamilton to Niagara area could see up to 5 centimeters, but a boomer bust forecast where if this track goes a little bit farther to the north, you could see 5 centimeters in the city of Toronto, or we could see, well, next to nothing. A warm up and a thaw is in the long range, and we'll have that more tomorrow on the show. Shannon.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Sophia. We'll see you tomorrow night. That is our show for you. Thanks so much for being here with us. We are back at Sunday at 11. We leave you now with a live look from the nation's capital. We'll see you soon.